What's going on, Dragon Ballers? I am here for another deck profile, this time with Blake, who did very, very well this weekend with Syn Shenron. So Blake, how you doing, man? And just talk a little about how you placed in the tournament.
I'm good. I went 5-1, finished 6th overall with Syn Shenron. It was a great experience. The webcam events are kind of a godsend to give us just a chance to play together, and it was great overall. The experience was great. Everybody I played was awesome. Played kind of the whole gauntlet of what seems to be the some of the top decks. I played Majin Vegeta, played Red Broly, played Dark Broly. I played Go Tanks. I saw a Vegex and Soul Striker, and came out 5-1. Was really happy with the results, and it was a great experience overall. Tournament was really well run. PPG did a great job.
Very nice, man. Yeah, it seems like you got a whole slew of the meta, which is some great data to go against here. So what made you want to play Syn Shenron?
So I was testing a bunch of different decks. In the last tournament, I actually played Soul Striker, and I went 3-3 with that. It was real close to 4-2. Had one game where I just didn't draw a single negate, so that felt real bad. And I tested Syn Shenron a lot against my teammates. Everybody was on different decks, and I've kind of seen everything. And the one thing that I felt like with Syn is that he offered a really good matchup into a lot of decks, and it was really just came down to if you could outplay your opponent, if you could see the things that you needed to. But Syn's so consistent right now that it's hard not to see the things that you need to see and to be able to get to that late turn. And then after seeing Kyle with his deck last week or the week before, the Syn player that topped, he got second. I like that inspired me. I was like, I love Syn. I like playing it, and he's been performing well ever since set 11 dropped. So
very cool, man. Yeah, and I totally agree with what you said about like the consistency of Syn. It really got a huge consistency boost in set 11, which I think really propelled it from set 10 into set 11. And the nice thing about this too is I think it's a really good pick for this weekend in particular, because Reboot Gohan just absolutely destroyed last weekend. So I think it was definitely a very, very solid pick to play something yellow. And I think Syn is one of the best control decks right now, so I definitely think it was a good call. So we'll get a little bit into the main deck here. So your Unison lineup is a little different than for what I've seen. So we have 4 Meki, 3 Vegeta. That's definitely very standard. But then 2 Vegeta Unison of Fury. So this is interesting to me because I see the synergy a little bit. Like, you have a lot of cards that you can afford to tap because, playing Vegeta Unison of Fury in an aggro deck or like even a mid-range deck is a little bit weird because oftentimes you don't really want to be resting your battle cards. But I suppose you could even rest him as well. But anyways, what's the main reason you included this card in the deck?
yeah, so I saw it in Kyle's list, and so I decided, I was like, I'm going to test it this week. I just want to see what it feels like in the deck, because the one thing about Prideful is there were a lot of times where it just felt like a dead card. As good as the card is, like a free play blocker in a deck that just wants to survive, it felt bad a lot of times because you didn't get to play it for free until turn 4 or 5.
Right.
So I would charge it a lot, and then by the time I was ready to use it, I had plenty of bodies on board, and I wasn't really that concerned about even free playing it. So it felt less and less valuable. And honestly, it felt like the deck's worst matchups were things that could get on top of me, stuff that just really aggroed me down super hard early. And being able to play Vegeta on turn 2 actually answered it. It was just that huge spot that fixed a hole in the deck that felt like you kind of lagged, was that you could only block so much with Syn, right? Even with the Zarbon play, you can only block so much. But what Vegeta does is just basically shuts down things like Go Tanks and Red Broly and Dark Broly, because it tells them they just can't. So they have to try and swing into him. So if you can drop him and then block away a swing or protect him for just another turn, he can stall, 2 or 3 turns to get you to the Meki play and get you to where you want to go with Syn.
Man, that actually seems really good, because that -1 there, it actually reminds me a lot of like Max Power Kamehameha, which is a card that a lot of decks are maining. But that -1 just says, yeah, you can't attack with your Go Tanks, you can't attack with your Red Brolys, your Dark Brolys. That seems actually quite good. I like that a lot. So here, this is pretty much just like the standard Syn stuff. I don't think this will really ever change, even when we get set 12, which we know we're gonna get more Syn support. But here's like a kind of on the spot question, and forgive me if you don't have like a prepared answer for this, but with set 12, we know we're getting more Syn, more dragons, right, for this deck. If there was one thing you think the deck needed out of the new dragons, do you have an idea of what it would be?
It probably just needs a better option to go fast sometimes, because I think that's the thing that hurts, or any sort of answer to blue decks, whether that's more like weenie blockers that can kind of protect you early, other than because blue is kind of the thing that feels rough for this deck because it doesn't have a good answer for go wide blue decks that just spam Obunis and stuff early. You get so many bodies. If you can't prideful for their tokens, you're basically just dead in the water. So it'd be nice to have something that could help with that, whether it's another blocker or something that can block twice or something to that nature.
Interesting. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, I kind of thought in the beginning, like when we got more and more Shadow Dragon support, that there would be like interchangeable engines that you could like swap in, swap out. But it kind of seems like this engine will always be the main one. And yeah, like kind of what we're talking about, the next engine we might get in set 12 might just be like a supplementary engine. Maybe it'll do something like that. Maybe it'll be a little more aggressive. Maybe it'll help you be a little more defensive. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But it's always something like to talk about with Syn players. So, all right, here's the next, the Haze engine. This is also pretty much standard, although you are only playing three Dragon Balls. So I think the 4-3-4 lineup here is what's generally pretty standard. And I will admit, you do have 7 copies of the 2-star ball with Ice Shenron, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But did you ever wish you had a 4th, or was 3 plus the Ice Shenrons always, plenty for what you needed?
I think 3 felt totally fine. With the ice, it makes a huge difference in your ability to kind of pick and choose what you want at times when you need to just have some energy to spend. You don't have anything to spend it on. You've got enough blockers. Maybe you want to just tap another energy or two. It's nice to have the ice because he lets you kind of decide what lane you need to play in. Honestly, in a lot of games, Haze doesn't see a ton of play for me. The way that I play the deck, I tend to be a little more defensive with it and just aim for the turn 6, tap 6, reanimate thing. So I'm playing more defensive. These guys are more for cheap bodies to get out sometimes to just help clear unisons, to maybe make it possible. And again, into blue, the hardest thing is, God Sealing exists. So
Right.
With no protection, sometimes you just need to do something to bait the God Sealing or force it out of their hand before you try to do the thing you want to do. So Haze kind of fills that role more for me. And then sometimes that crit swing is just something to keep their hand minimized before you go in for the double strike to try and finish them off if they're at 3 life or something.
So I was going to ask you, which maybe due to your playstyle, it doesn't necessarily apply, but I was going to ask, is there some matchups where you kind of prioritize this engine over like the main Syn engine, or not really?
Not really. I don't, unless it's somebody who puts a unison down. Like I would assume that if I played an engine that somebody was playing blue and they were dropping Zeno early and I needed to get him down just to keep the board wipe off for later game or something, I would probably prioritize the Haze to get the double strike out. And then the crit is nice into decks that want to kill themselves, like decks that want to spike themselves down, like Broly, that take their own life. The crit is nice because it puts on some pressure and tries to get cards out of hand to protect their life from being crit damage, so they don't lose maybe a piece of their engine they're missing from their life.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah, so I do appreciate the very in-depth explanation there. All right, so here is the other lineup of dragons for ice. That's definitely mandatory cards. The main reason why I think this deck has been able to transition so well into set 11, it's just an insane consistency boost. One of the Naturon Shenrons, just because you can pretty much bring them back to life with your leader's tap 6 effect. And then this is the secret we're going with, Syn Shenron Negative Energy Incarnate. Now this is really funny to me because I remember when this card was first revealed, everyone was like, it's pretty trash. Like, why would you ever play this in Syn over Celzino? Or even to the point, why would you ever play this in any yellow deck over Celzino? But I see a lot of players, even my teammates, are moving over to this secret rare. And I gotta ask you why. Only because I don't think it's a bad card at all, but I think that the deck is so inherently defensive that my logic is just like, why not play a game-ending SCR? So why this like super ultra defensive SCR?
I think that this one offers an answer to playing back and forth into control decks or playing really long games where you kind of run out of options. The Haze 4-drop, being able to kill stuff that's more than their energy, is so good early game, but then if the game kind of stalls and lags along and you get to that point where those Hazes become dead and you don't really have any removal, the Syn SCR just can buy you a turn at times, maybe the 5 energy turn. You get a bunch of balls. Like going into go tanks, they blow a lot of stuff up too, so you're blowing each other's stuff up. They're putting it in the drop and you're protecting yourself with like Nimbus and stuff, so you're getting a huge discount on the SCR. And a lot of times, like turn 5, if you just got maybe a Zamasu in super combo in hand and the Syn SCR on board and maybe a Nimbus, like you can stall the entire 5 energy turn to get to your 6 energy turn and play all your dragons by just dropping him if they can't respond and blow him up in some way.
Okay, so it's kind of like that turn 5 buffer where he gets you to your win con of, turn 6 tap all and go in that way. Is that kind of a decent summation?
Yeah, that's kind of how I view him. Is he helps stall games sometimes when you're just you get in a bind and you can't really answer like a wide board or somebody trying to swing at you a bunch of times on turn 5 before you get to your ultimate turn.
Very cool. All right, so here's the negate lineup, and this is really nice. I think for a while there, Time Magic was not very good because there weren't a ton of things that attacked multiple times or things that restood. But now with Gotenks, I think Time Magic's actually really good again. And actually, for me at least, Nimbus is kind of falling off because a lot of these Unisons are able to attack more than once, or even the fact that Unisons just get around Flying Nimbus also kind of hinders it. And then Release from Evil, I think, is really good against Reboot Gohan. So were there any other matchups where like Time Magic and Release from Evil excelled besides the kind of obvious ones?
I don't think so. Release from Evil honestly is one of those cards that in hindsight I probably would have gone 2 of, but I was pretty tight on deck space and I was trying to tech for everything because best of ones can be tricky.
Right.
And I put 1 in there primarily for the Gohan matchup, and honestly in classic fashion, you have that like buyer's remorse where you like put the deck together, you submit it, and you're like, oh, why didn't I do 2 of that?
Right.
Because what's the consistency of finding that 1 in the matchup that you need it? Like chances are it's probably the 1 card I don't find in the Gohan matchup, but
You're just hoping and praying.
right. You hope it's there somewhere. And the Time Magic was it was great into Gotenks and the things it needed to be in. And then Nimbus it served its purpose to just stop really wide boards. Sometimes people get in a habit of swinging with their leader because they're looking for something, and being able to just Nimbus that leader swing and then just say, okay, you only get 1 battle card swing is so nice. But there are times where with Time Magic it just saves your life against like Gotenks and those dual attacks, and having stuff like that come at you, it just kind of stalls turns, which is exactly what Syn's trying to do.
I will totally agree with you there about the Nimbus thing, where a lot of times your opponent will attack with the leader, and that actually kind of brings up a thing in my head that I've been thinking about. Like, Yellow has not been doing so hot in set 11 so far, and actually even in set 10 it wasn't doing so great either. But I really do believe that Yellow is a color that punishes your opponent heavily for misplaying things like Zamasu Super Combo, things like Raider's Warcry, things like Nimbus if they attack with the leader. So I do like that point a lot, actually. All right, so moving on to the final cards of the deck, we have 4 Zamasu. I think it's definitely the best super combo you can play in a deck like this. 2 Vegeta Final Flash, only 3 Zarbon Emperor's Attendant. So I know many players that would tell you this is a 4 of, no negotiations. Was 3 okay? Did you ever wish you had the extra one or not?
Honestly, there's a chance that that's like one of the cards that goes down 1 or 2, like just becomes like a 1 or 2 of in the deck, because when it's good, it's insane, but when it's bad, it just feels really underwhelming. And there are times where there are probably other cards I would rather see than Zarbon. Like he's a stall tactic in this deck, like just to help you stop another attack. And at times he kind of offsets things when, again, like you said, when your opponent misplays things, swings with stuff out of order, Zarbon can, if you sequence him right, he can kind of surprise your opponent where they think they're being cute and they swing out of order, and you can restand your blocker after letting them get an attack on lead. And you can do a lot of cute things with him, but there are also times where you're holding him, you're like, wow, I wish this was almost any other card in the deck, and I wish I had another one of those instead. So he's kind of all over the place as far as his utility. Vegeta's Final Flash, I mean, Zamasu, those are just cards that at times just save your life because you're able to negate skills and arrest things and stuff. So this is like the best part of the utility lineup for sure in the deck.
Gotcha. And then of course the food strata just to end games and whatnot. So that's the deck list overall, man. Anything you would change about it, and any shout outs you want to get out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Zarbon is probably, like I said, on the chopping block. I think the Vegeta Unison is probably the spice or the ad that I gotta give credit to Kyle for, because that was such a brilliant ad. I want to shout out the local Minnesota scene. Everybody here, I haven't been playing the game super long. We got in at set 9, me and my buddies did, and they've been great helping us get caught up. They answer all our questions because we still have them, because we're still noobs, like since set 9. And then my teammates, the Otherworld Outcast boys, the Outcast Haven, we jam games relentlessly, grind and grind and grind to try and get better. And it's I have to give credit to them for helping me and pushing me as a player for sure.
Awesome, man. Very glad to hear it. Very good talking to you, and we will see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joey.